achieve the SDGs, we need to collaborate, we need to work together. We are already impacting the lives of 2 billion people, the 1,500 entrepreneurs and catalysts. So it's not a small amount. But if we are working together and the social economy becomes much more mainstream, we could actually reach all the 8 billion people and make sure everyone has a good quality of life, the SDGs are achieved, and there is an equitable society. So I think that's what social economy is to me.
It's fascinating. You point to the startup phase and then accelerating a program more broadly. Vice President, let me bring you in. The Insights report highlights the role of policies in unlocking the potential of the social economy. Now, Europe has become a leader in social and green policies. We've also seen a 7-year social economy action plan. Just talk to us how digital and green transitions fit into the notion of a social economy.
Thank you. First, let me tell you how happy I am to be in this totally gender unbalanced panel. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to discuss with social economy leaders and the great public. When this commission started in December 2019, my president, Ursula von der Leyen, when she gave me these portfolio responsibilities, she told me, I want you to be the most anthropocentric commissioner. You know, I don't want you to do tariffs, money, services. I want you to be the people's commissioner. And when one takes a look at across the policy board on these anthropocentric policies, I think social economy is by definition the jewel and the crown, because some people would expect the Commission, Brussels, to rely more on established figures, you know, to do business with diplomats and financial engineers and so on and so forth. But no, social economy is now a new chapter that we need to read through and exploit fully. Because social economy does produce added value, it's a force of good, it has a potential to contribute to cohesive local communities. It can bring in some of these bridging of the skills gap that we face in Europe. And it could also be key in these twin transitions, both digital and green. So when we presented this action plan for social economy, which takes us to 2030, I think that was a big step, and I'm delighted that it was understood like that. Most of the policies, measures that will be rolling out in the next 7 years have this 7 years horizon, but there are 3 things that we're doing this year, next year, I think that's important. First, we are launching this Youth Entrepreneurship Academy, which is key. Most of our youth in Europe prefer salaried employment, and we want to change that. We want to foster entrepreneurship from young age. We want people to take risks, to invest in people. Another thing which is important also is we're setting up a single gateway for our member states and for the actors, social economy actors, where that would be a one-stop shop where one can access everything that is available in terms of funding, regulatory environments, initiative, best practices, like a gateway to social economy heaven, if I may put it like this. And then next year we will also presenting specific guidance to our member states. After the action plan, now member states need to be helped to be more precise, more vertical, more forensic, if you like. So we would switch from horizontal to more specific and sectoral advice. So to cut a long story short, this is the beginning of a new promising era, and we will be part of it.
Thank you very much for those comments. I must say, I can't get the image of Princess Diana out of my mind as you're talking about being the People's Commissioner.
I take it as a compliment.
Of the European Commission. Sharon, let me turn to you. Deloitte has collaborated on the Insights report around the social economy. And I think about this from a business perspective. We've had many more conversations with big business talking about having impact, and whether that's agricultural giants finally saying, well, rural workers need to be paid more. We need to think about the entire ecosystem. Big banks, UBS, for instance, talking about impact investing, putting money right across global economies in areas they wouldn't normally invest. And of course, we talk about vaccine equity and having some sort of equal distribution so that health doesn't hold people back from economic outcomes. But as you think about it from your point of view, from Deloitte, why is now the time to focus on the social economy?
Okay, well, firstly, just want to say I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and also that we've been collaborating with the Forum and the Schwab Foundation on this report, which we're very excited to launch today. But the world is facing multiple complex threats and challenges. You know, disruption is the new normal. And I think all businesses have to step up and take action. But also we have to expand the social economy. You know, they've proved that they can put purpose before profit and make real social impact very successfully. And Deloitte has been living our purpose for 177 years. We've gone from a sole trader in 1845 in London to a $59 billion organisation today in over 150 countries with nearly 400,000 people. And with that scale, I think comes significant responsibility. And so we've been investing in our services to help our clients, in developing our people, and importantly, in projects in the communities that we live and work in, so that we can enable them to thrive and be successful in a very challenging environment. And there are so many global issues like climate change that are accelerating in urgency and cost and impacting societies and economies. And so more and more businesses are thinking about putting purpose and impact at the heart of their operating models. But then, you know, how do they then, you know, I suppose ensure resilience? That's part of ensuring resilience in terms of environmental shocks, economic and operational. But also, they've got to think about their stakeholders. There's more and more challenge coming from investors, shareholders, regulators, customers, and very importantly, employees. So we do a Millennial and Gen Z survey every year. We've just published it. And millennials and Gen Zs are basically very concerned about the state of the world and also the challenge that they have in terms of their own, you know, facing things like inflation, the cost of living, but how they also make a difference. And the majority of them are saying that they are doing things in their personal lives to make a difference. But importantly, they're expecting businesses, and including their employer, to be aligned to their values, but also to be, you know, making a difference, to having an impact and helping to change the world. So the things that business can do to be effective are to collaborate with, support and invest in, you know, other organizations and particularly social entrepreneurs, and to support this. And a great example of collaboration is the world's largest carbon emissions reduction forest project in Indonesia. And they raise funds by selling carbon credits, which helps to fund conservation, protecting a 26,000-year-old forest. And we're engaging local farmers to support them. And the CO2 that is, I suppose, that is sequestered in this is the equivalent of taking 2 million cars off the road every year. So it's a fantastic project. Also helps protect endangered species. They're doing research on carbon emissions. They're planting 500,000 saplings a year, and they're doing fire prevention. So it's, you know, a great example of collaboration.
Terrific example. Vice President, I want to just follow up with you, because one of the challenges I see to the social economy is a more challenging economy. We know that funding is crucial, and you mentioned that as part of your introduction here. Funding, as we talk about the startup community, getting people to take risks. We have moved now from an era of negative to zero interest rates to one where there are rising interest rates, challenges around companies not making it, not actually being profitable, and then just purely down to young people coming into the workforce, not wanting to take those risks because they don't have the skill set they could possibly not actually prove successful. How do you conquer the challenges now of an economy that is potentially worsening for the social economy?
Well, there's no doubt that we live in an era where the ingredients of a perfect storm are gathering. That's clear. But I think it would be a mistake if we were to place social economy into within some sort of a greenhouse. That social economy would only be possible if protected in the good years, and social economy would evaporate in the bad years. I think we need to build a brand in a way that would be resilient regardless of the broader political and economic atmospherics. That's a challenge. And I think that's why, from the European perspective, we need to keep investing, not only resources, but also I think it's crucial to produce a regulatory ecosystem around social economy that could contribute to the resilience of the sectors. Let me give you some examples. For example, there are 3 areas where I think Europe can make a difference in creating this broader ecosystem. First, going local. Of course, Deloitte is a mega entity, and I congratulate you on everything you do, but social economy projects inevitably have to be local. So we should never miss this contribution to local communities, to what matters on the ground. And this is a challenge. It's not easy. You don't get this right from Brussels or from a corporate building. You have to help local leaders, local social entrepreneurs, local people to assume, and they have to have the certainty that you are next to them, but not pushing them or guiding them. The other thing is we also need, of course we have this EU action plan now, but I think we need more national laws at member state level that empower a social economy perspective. We have now many member states which have moved to this direction. Spain, for example, was one of the pioneers, and others follow. I would also take this opportunity to encourage ambassadors and national representatives here to take a closer look at what can be done nationally with the regulatory environment. And the third key area for resilience, it's statistics. It may sound geeky or insignificant, but it matters a lot. We need evidence, we need statistics. And although these are very often small projects that are very difficult to quantify or to measure, we need impact indicators, we need statistics. So if we can work in these areas, these components, I think that would be key to bring resilience into the sector.
Drew, I want to get you in on this point too, of resilience. I mean, you've seen many cycles, economic cycles as well, yet you still had successful social enterprises that you've run. Just give us a sense of what policies help and what sort of practices have kept public, private and governments motivated towards the social economy over the last 20 years.
I think basically it's difficult sometimes for governments to accept it, but what keeps them motivated is the sure impact that the social economy achieves. So, for example, we work on land rights. Okay, one of our partners, Landesa, a social entrepreneur, works on land rights. So they've taken, and that if you don't have land rights, you don't have poverty, your poverty. So they've been able to help 100 million families with land rights in 45 countries. In Europe itself, Butzog works with nurses, and they've actually been able to have 33% of the nurses working for them, but reduce healthcare costs by 40%. Echoing Green works on racial equity, and then they've been able to mainstream racial equity and that whole dialogue into it. In COVID, our entrepreneurs, Gunj, who were working, they were able to not just help patients right at the front lines, and I think almost every social entrepreneur was at the front lines. So they were doing a lot of stuff on the front lines, but we were doing it with providing dignity. That's why we were able to work with the government. And by doing it, provide work, be able to give dignity, they built 200 kilometers of roads, just making sure that vaccines and other things could get through. So I think social entrepreneurs are respected for policy. And if I give my own personal example, with HAYLI in India, we worked through tons, I think around 6 government cycles, and we've still been able to expand to every single district of India because we don't get political and we stick to what is most important, which is impact. And like what you said, we have the data. We have how we've been able to rescue people, children. We have how we've been able to impact trafficking. So we have a lot of examples. And when we are able to give impact and data, governments are willing to work with us. However, if we don't have an ecosystem, we are not going to be able to work. And I think what we really need, what you're saying, Vice President, is creating a social enterprise ecosystem in every single country of the world. And I think that's what we are working towards.
Shari, let me get you in on this, because we know that there are commitments made by the C-suite around ESG now, and there's a lot more pressure from the fund managers to deliver on those targets. Yet, if you think about one of the challenges now, CEOs have such a complex set of topics to tackle, from the pandemic still, the demand story, to inflation, to growth fears, potential recession, war in Ukraine. As they tackle ESG, is there a how that becomes much easier if they listen to what some of the social enterprises are doing?
I think it's a really great question, and I think that there is actually, it's a two-way thing, that we can learn from what social enterprises are doing, but also they can learn some, and we can provide them with resources and expertise. So, I'm a big believer in the importance of diversity of thought, that we can learn from others who think differently and do things differently. And I think that if you put social economy actors and the private sector together, there's a huge opportunity for them to learn and benefit from one another. And I suppose some really good examples of that I'll just share, and building on what you were saying, Vice President, that local focus for local impact is critical. And lots of businesses are working out how they make a difference to the world, but a lot of them are internally focused. We need, if you leverage and think about what the social entrepreneurs are doing, it's much more localized issues that they're dealing with, and they have the agility to respond. So, corporates need to be thinking, how can I leverage and mobilize my employees? And you think about our 400,000 people. They can have a big impact locally if we get them focused on the right things. But we also need to be thinking about what we can do outside of our organization and supporting and enabling organizations like the social entrepreneurs that we're talking about. And a good example, something that we've been working on with the Forum and with Salesforce, is the world-class Uplink Education Challenge. And that was designed to get, identify social entrepreneurs, give them access to expertise, experience, resources to enable them to scale up. And we've been, finding and identifying, scaling, truly innovative learning solutions that will have an impact focused on Africa and Asia. And another example is in procurement and supply chain. And so again, businesses thinking about collaborating with social entrepreneurs in their supply chain to make a difference in terms of, working environment, transparency, and inequality. And a really good example is Tony's Open Chain, which was an initiative led by the cocoa industry, which is open and free to all chocolate makers. And it's based on 5 sourcing principles. But again, it's designed to help them transform their supply chains to make them sustainable, and to work to end modern slavery and illegal child labour. And they commit to open and transparent supply chains, and importantly, paying higher prices to support the living wage for farmers. And then I suppose a final example is inclusion, and all businesses are trying to do a lot more on inclusion, but we can learn so much from social entrepreneurs who have really been successful on that. And an example is IKEA, who've set up their social entrepreneurship project, where they identify social entrepreneurs who are focused on making a difference to everyday lives, particularly for those who need it most. And again, they've been helping them scale and increase their impact. And the social entrepreneurs, learn from IKEA about global product development, and IKEA learns from the social entrepreneurs about local handicraft techniques and sustainable food production. So it's and they initially started helping 100 people. They're now up to over 20,000. So there are some amazing examples of corporates and social entrepreneurs working together, collaborating, learning from one another, which gives me real hope for the future.
Sharon, thank you very much for that. I think we have just scratched the surface on the topic, but I know that some in the audience may want to participate and might have their own questions. So we do have a roving microphone. If you just want to pop your hand up and introduce yourself, just down the front here. We have a couple of questions, so we might just get you to say who you are. And
yes, good morning. My name is Frederick Bailey from Group SOS in France. I would like to echo the comments just made by the panelists around the need for regulatory frameworks. As a French group, we've been striving in an environment that is obviously very enabling. France has very strong public policies. We now have a law on SSE. Now that we go global, we see the difference when in countries where there is no such regulatory framework. And I would like to draw your attention to an initiative led by France, Spain, and other countries within the Pact for Impact Alliance, and with the help of the UN Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy, we are working at tabling a resolution for the recognition of the SSE by the United Nations General Assembly towards the end of the year. And I'm wondering how, for instance, the European Commission can actually help and support such an initiative, because Europe, as you rightly said, is at the forefront. It is an example. How can Europe maybe help such an initiative and also other countries in shaping their own environments? Thank you.
Do you want to come in quickly on that?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious answer is by asking all our member states to vote your resolution in the United Nations. That would help. You have 27 votes in the pocket. And then, of course, we have a ring of friends and like-minded countries across the world. I think it's a perfect example of how you can catalyze regulatory change internationally.
We also have a question here.
Thank you very much. Jonathan Wong from the United Nations. I suppose we've all seen how the pandemic, Ukraine, the climate crisis have revealed a really fractured economy in dire need of innovation. And from what we've heard today, the social economy could be an alternative economic model to challenge the traditional mainstream. But it's still far from the mainstream, as we all know. My question is kind of to Vice President Schinas and Ms. Thorne as well. To Vice President Schinas, from a government perspective, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about social economy models challenging mainstream economic models? And actually, more importantly, how quickly can this happen? And similarly to Ms. Thorne, from a business perspective, how optimistic or pessimistic are you around businesses embracing, as you mentioned, profit and purpose, and importantly, how quickly can that happen? Thank you.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, full disclosure, I am a born optimist. I'm a born optimist. I always resisted what I call the intellectual appeal of pessimism. You know, somehow if you're a pessimist, you get invitations which are very popular. When it comes to social economy, when we started at the European Union discussing social economy, it was terra incognita. Most of the cases, when I was mentioning social economy, many of my interlocutors at the services were saying, what's this? Help me? It was not obvious, because in the Brussels environment, this was not an obvious area to work with.
Right.
But then, when actually we burst this and we started working on it and familiarizing ourselves, and then many people worked on this action plan, then it became, I would say, very mainstream, and is now present everywhere. And we have a blueprint, we have a sequence of actions, we are rolling them out. So yes, I was optimistic and I remain optimistic on social
Drew,
economy.
you just want to jump in quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say actually what Grupo SS is doing. You know, they are one of the largest enterprises, and with Pact for Impact, if we are able to get this resolution through, we can actually work towards creating social economy globally. Because what we are then able to do is create the economic infrastructure which we need for social economy to thrive, to have the funding which is necessary for social economy. Because if we don't have that, you're always trying to scrap for the little bits that are there. And what we really need is policy in place so that we can create the infrastructure, we can have the funding, and be able to reach the scale to help the most marginalized and to create a good quality of life. So I really think that is something important, and I think everyone in this room, all policymakers, everyone should be backing this resolution for the social economy and creating an ecosystem that we need. I think that is really key, and that's the push that we need to make going forward, really.
Sharon, let's hear from you.
Yeah, no, I'm very optimistic, actually. And I think more and more business leaders are embracing stakeholder capitalism. And I referenced the impact of, the various stakeholders and the pressure that it puts on business. But there are an increasing number of leaders who just know it's the right thing to do. But for those who don't, they've got the pressure from consumers, employees, regulators, investors, etc., who will drive that change. And I mentioned our millennial and Gen Zs. 86% of Deloitte people are millennials and Gen Zs. We are not going to be able to attract and retain the best talent if we do not, have a really strong purpose and live it. And people know who work for us that we absolutely embrace our purpose and deliver on it every day.
We almost need to wrap the session up. Just quickly, 10 seconds each. What sort of action can people in the room take, people online, over the next 12 months to forward the social economy?
Get the resolution through in the UN and lobby with your governments to make sure that we have a social economy infrastructure.
Vice President?
Yeah, I think the regulatory focus is important. These ecosystems do not produce themselves. We need to create the conditions, and we'll be working on that.
Sharon?
I think for business, having more fora like this where we educate people and explain to them the benefits of collaborating with the social economy is going to be critical.
Sharon, Vice President, Jeru, thank you so much for joining us and helping us finish on time.
Thank you very much.